And away we go. Welcome to the Orphans of Avraham Thursday night roundtable discussion of all things Torah and Judaism. I am your host, James, at jamestheauto-smasher@gmail.com. Today I want to do something here. In fact, I don't even need anybody here to talk about it, and that is the ger. You hear us talking about that quite often. My claim is there is no such thing as a convert called ger in the Torah. There are 33 verses that specifically mention ger. There are 40 total that have ger, something close to it. For instance, Moshe naming his son Gershom. But I have a Koren Tanakh, which is, I hear, an excellent translation, one of the most favored translations. And I have a list of verses. I also have a couple of Chumashim here. I can look them up if need be to clarify if need be. But what I want to focus on is just the written Torah. What is in the written Torah? So this is going to be a boring hangout. It's going to, I doubt there's going to be some fire. I'm not even sure if anyone wants to show up and talk about this because we've all agreed that the ger is a convert. And I'm here to lay that myth to rest. Even before I get in there, there is a ger toshav has to at least accept the 7, or he doesn't get to stay in Israel. Simple as that. I never heard that they ever had to become fully Jewish, that a slave becomes fully Jewish. And that's the myth. All right. So, boring as it might be, we're just going to go through a list here in the Bible, and when we're done, we're done. Genesis 15, verse 13. And he said to Avraham, know surely that thy seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall observe them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. Okay. If you want to know when it says stranger, otherwise translated here, let me get both of my books out here. And he said unto Avraham, or he said unto Abram, know with certainty that your offspring will be ger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. And they shall afflict them for 400 years. So, as we can see in the Koren Tanakh, calls them a stranger. The Bible uses the word ger. Genesis 23:4. Avraham rose up and said, I am ger and a toshav with you. Give me a burial place as a possession with you, so I may bury my dead from before me. I am a ger and a toshav, he says. A toshav we can say means resident, but a toshav is not a ger. Is it convert? Let's see. I am a convert and a toshav with you. Give me a place to bury. Give me a burial place as a possession with you, so that I may bury my dead from before me. So obviously, Avraham was a convert in Haran. Okay? No. I've been a stranger and a resident, I would say is probably what the Koren here, if we have a question. Exodus 2:22. And she bore a son, and Moses called his name Gershom, for he said, I was a ger in a strange land. Now, I was a convert in a strange land. Is Moses saying I'm a convert? Do you think Moses converted in Israel? Is that what Moses did? Was he a convert? So the first 3 verses, convert, just doesn't work. I'm a convert and a toshav. Know that certainly your offspring shall be converts in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. I'm pretty sure that the conversion process for Israel, if any be needed, would have happened at Sinai 40 years before that. But moving right along, Exodus 12:19. 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses, for whoever eats of it, which is leavened, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. whether he be a ger or one that is born in the land. Now, some people could argue that this is a convert. So we'll put a pin. This is one we can actually put a pin in and come back to. Because one could say, well, that means convert. Meh. Could mean convert. Exodus 12:48, and when a ger shall dwell with you and keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one as is born in the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat of the Passover offering. Now, here's a tricky one, because this is quite often what is used by folks to claim that this is a convert, but it's not. When a ger shall dwell with you and keep the Passover, all his males be circumcised. Let him come near and keep it. Now, not only does the ger have to have his kids circumcised, he has to be circumcised. And what are his children? Let's just say there's a ger in the land, whatever we want to say this ger is. Why would his children be uncircumcised if he was a Jew, right? Isn't ger supposed to be convert? Doesn't that just mean an Israelite full blown, right? Full convert, dipped, snipped, done in the tribe. Then why would they need to be circumcised? If one's a convert, I would assume one would not convert without the family. Although I'm told I should convert, even though my children will not be raised Jewish. My wife is not going to convert. I should become Jewish anyway because I'm half a man. I'm picking and choosing mitzvot. And when a convert shall dwell with you, does a convert dwell with Israel? Or is a convert Israel? And it says when he's circumcised, he's as if he was the native born. So if Exodus 12:48 is saying that, and he shall be as one as born in the land, we'll go back up to here to Exodus 12:19. That soul shall be cut off from his congregation, whether he be a ger or one that is born in the land. So that right there already hints that a ger is not circumcised. Certainly his children aren't. Doesn't sound like a Jew to me. Doesn't sound like a convert. Maybe. I don't know. Exodus 18:3. So this is the first 5. We've gone 5 verses so far. And I think verse 12:48 kind of gives us a clue as 12:19. Exodus 18:3, and her 2 sons, one of whom was named Gershom, for he said, I've been a stranger, a ger in a strange land. Ger is the word he uses, Gershom. We'll move on from that. Exodus 20 verse 9. But the seventh day is a Sabbath unto the Lord your God. On it you shall do no manner of work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your maidservant, nor your manservant, nor your cattle, nor your ger that is within your gates. Your converts, you would have to actually rest a convert? What, converts don't know better? You don't think a person who converted to Judaism, got dipped and snipped, would know? Really? Just curious. Wouldn't hear that Sabbath thing, huh? Just kind of, you'd have to remind him, right? You have to rest him like you would your animal, right? Because he's a convert. Converts don't know any better. They're converts. If he's a convert, why would he even need to be told to be rested? And why would he be up there with maidservants and manservants? Exodus 20:20. You shall not wrong a ger, neither shall you oppress him, for you were gerim in the land of Egypt. Okay, so let's do the convert dance, right? That's what it's all about. That's what they tell you. And when they don't want to believe it, they change the subject. They don't like it. They don't like the ger thing. I'll get to that because part of the Noahide Hangout also talks about the Nochri and the Noahide code. We'll get to that. But I want to get the ger thing out of the way. Okay, 23:9. So, yeah, let's do the convert dance real quick here. And you shall not wrong a convert, neither shall you oppress him, for you were converts in the land of Egypt. Does that make sense to you? If you're a Torah guy, Torah lady, you would know that's a big hunk of fat BS. Now, some people actually believe that's what is meant. It's not what's written in the Torah. Why would Israelites be converts in Egypt? You shall not oppress a convert this is okay, that was 2020. It says the same thing in 23:9. Exodus 23:9. You shall not oppress a ger, for you know the soul of the ger, seeing as you were gerim in the land of Egypt. And it says, so let's do the convert dance here. And you shall not oppress a convert, for you know the soul of a convert, seeing as you were converts in the land of Egypt. Right? It's a convert, though. I mean, whenever the word convert, whenever the word ger comes up, we should just think convert and don't even think different, or else you're going to have a lot of people jumping down your throat. Doesn't matter what God says. Doesn't matter what Torah says. You have to do what you're told, and that means convert. So the Israelites, that's a whole new sugya. That's a whole new teaching, a whole new theme that we could open up discussing. The day and the years that the Israelites converted and became Israelites in Egypt. The converts, remember, it's a convert. Don't think any different. It's always a convert. That's what you're told. It always means convert. Moving right along. Exodus 23:12. 6 days you shall do your... Okay, hang on just a second. I got pups in here. Come here, Rob. Come on, out. Can you get out real quick? All right, good dog. Okay. All right. Exodus 23:12. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day you shall rest. So rest your ox and your donkey, may they have rest, and the son of your maidservant and the ger may be refreshed. Maidservants, ger, and your convert may be refreshed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 verses so far, and we can't really nail down the whole convert thing, can we? In fact, convert sounds stupid, which is how some people sound to me. And I'm really nice about things because I believe Naaman was a convert. I think when Jethro came and acknowledged God, he converted. He wasn't Jewish. He wasn't in one of the tribes. He was not one of the children of Israel. He's not the stalk of Jacob. What is he? What is Naaman? Well, he didn't convert. Well, something happened. That doesn't make him a Jew. That doesn't make him the son, the son of Jacob. Moving right along to the next book in Leviticus, we're going to go Leviticus 16:29. And Yom Kippur, we're speaking, and Yom Kippur shall be for you an eternal decree. In the 7th month of the 7th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and shall do no work. Shall do no manner of work, neither the native born nor the ger who dwells among you. We could say that's a convert, right? We could. But so far, it doesn't seem to fit. I mean, when we've read the Torah so far through Exodus, and every time the ger pops up, the word convert just doesn't sit. Okay? Unless you say that Avraham converted while he was in Haran. You can say that... or Avraham, then you could say that Moses was a convert in Egypt because he converted in Egypt. Yeah, it had to have been because that's what we're told. It's a convert. Leviticus 17:8. And you shall say unto them, any man of the house of Israel, or of the ger who dwells among them, that offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting and as to prepare it for the Lord, that man shall be cut off from his people. I want to read that again because that kind of sounds important. And you shall say to them, any man of the house of Israel or the ger who dwells among them that offers a burnt offering and sacrifice. The convert that dwells among them. House of Israel is the house of Judah, the house of Levi, the house of Benjamin, the house of Sam. You know, there are 12 tribes. 13. 13? Is it 13? Can we count? Can we say that? Yeah, so that is an actual tribe. That's a house. That's a bloodline that runs before Egypt. That goes back to Canaan. Okay, that's what the house of Israel is, or the Ger that dwells among them. Leviticus 17:10. Any man of the house of Israel, or the Ger who dwells among them, who will consume any blood, I shall turn my attention to the soul who consumed the blood, and I will cut him off from among his people. Any man of the house of Israel, or of the Ger who dwells with them. Now let's read his convert. Any man of the house of Israel, or of the Ger who dwells among them. I just don't see how a convert dwells among, but becomes a part of. And even if so, I wonder if the convert's even considered a Jew by Israel standards. I mean, apparently, yeah, a long time ago, it was pretty easy. It was done in a month. But these are people who stay in your land for at least a year. The convert who dwells among you. Meh. That's one that needs a pen. Leviticus 17:10 could have a pen, but I doubt it. The convert doesn't dwell. Convert is of the house of Israel. You call a convert a Jew, last I heard. Did you convert? Oh, I'm Jewish. Oh, well, that's different than someone who just accepts the 7, isn't it? Now, there's nothing in here that says what a ger is, really. We have to go by language. There's no definition. Again, Leviticus 18:26, but you shall observe my statutes and my judgments, and you shall not do any of these sexual abominations, neither the native born, nor the ger who dwells among you. Leviticus 19:33, when a ger dwells in your land, you shall not ridicule him or do him wrong. Do him no wrong. Now, when a convert dwells with you in your land, you shall not ridicule him, not do him any wrong. Is God saying this to converts? Possibly. But certainly not of the first, 7 or 8 different times it's used so far, at least in Exodus. It can't be a convert. When a ger dwells in your land, if you've converted, dipped and snipped, some of that land should be yours, right? No? Maybe? You should not ridicule him or do him wrong? Why would God need to say that? Maybe. I mean, you could, I'm not saying maybe. I know it's not a convert. But for those who want to believe, Leviticus 19:34, the ger who dwells with you shall be like a native born, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were gerim in the land of Egypt. I am Hashem your God. Here we go. When a convert dwells with you, he shall be like the native. Well, the ger who dwells with you shall be like a native born, and you shall love him like yourself, for you were converts in the land of Egypt. Once again, the greatest thing about modern rabbis, they've let me know that, once again, that Israelites converted in Egypt. Welcome, William. I'm just going through a list, a nice long list here of every time ger or gerim or for that matter, Gershom's brought up throughout the Bible. I'm just going to keep going.
Oh, keep going.
And say, when everyone says the ger is a convert, period, and they can argue till the cows come home, but what they're telling me is when God says you were converts in the land of Egypt. So we have a whole other thing that the whole Bible left out, a whole story that even the oral Torah leaves out about all the Israelites who converted in Egypt. Leviticus 22, say to the children of Israel, any man of the children of Israel or of the Ger who dwells with Israel, who gives his offspring to a false god Molech, shall be surely put to death. The people of the land shall stone him. The convert who dwells with Israel. Where else do converts go in Torah? Why does he have to dwell with them? I thought Israel was already a nation.
Well, maybe that's referring to people who convert but live abroad. Or maybe it can't. Well, it can't mean that, right? Because it's dwelling. That's a good question.
Well, they were converts in Egypt. Remember that. So when John and Asher get in here, we can explain to them why Jews were converts in Israel, because everyone loves to use it, but no one really likes to get serious about it. That's why I'm doing this, just for posterity.
Okay.
Leviticus 22, 18 and 19. Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel and say to them, any man of the house of Israel or the Gerim among Israel who will bring his offering to fulfill any of their vows or any of their free will offerings and brings it to the Lord as a burnt offering, in order for it to be favorably accepted, it must be unblemished. It must be an unblemished male from the herd or flock, or from the flock of sheep or goats. Again, any man of the house of Israel or of the Gerim among Israel.
You know, this is the part that I don't understand, that I probably need someone to clarify for me, is how is it that, why does it say the converts amongst Israel? If you've already converted, then you're a Jew. So why does it have to, that's where it's confusing for me. That's why I always understood when it said stranger within your gates, it just meant, even the Goyim. Now clearly the Sanhedrin interpreted it differently, but I don't understand why it was interpreted differently. Why does it say, or why do they translate it, the converts who dwell among you? If they're converts, then they're 100% Jewish. Why distinguish them? That's what I don't get.
I've got a Koren Tanakh, which is quite a favored translation, and that's what that was my go-to. I've got 3 Humashim, and they all say different things sometimes, so I decided to settle on this. I'm going to look at 22, 18, and 19. And the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, whatever he be of the house of Israel, or the strangers in Israel, that will offer a sacrifice. They pretty much, I looked through and I just kind of gave up after I got through with Leviticus, but it was always a stranger. That's how they interpret it. And not all, huh?
It makes sense to me. I mean, if you're a convert, then you're 100% Jew. So why even say that?
When we went back in Exodus, one of the things I posted about the Passover, when a ger shall dwell with you and keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one born in the land, not like it said back here, but he said he shall be as one born with the land. That means he has to circumcise and his kids have to be circumcised.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing there would be a conversion without full conversion. I mean, it's just a weird.
Yeah. It's strange. If they're stranger in the gates, they should have already been circumcised. But so so I guess they're interpreting that is actually a person who hasn't converted, and it's basically saying that they need to convert. But the Torah, as far as I know, always says ger.
Yep.
So I guess it's, they have poetic license to interpret it, depending on the verse, which way they want to interpret that.
We're almost halfway. Like we might be halfway now. Leviticus 24:6. Whoever blasphemes the name of Hashem shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him, whether a ger or a native born. If he blasphemes the name, he shall be put to death. Not sure if that would count as a convert, why that would need to be any different. Could be a convert or a native born, maybe. But if you're considered a native born after you circumcise for Passover, hard for me to believe this is a Jew or an Israelite or of the house of Israel. Leviticus 25:23. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine, and you are Gerim and residents with me. That's Ger and Toshav right there. So let's read it. Let's do the convert dance. And the land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine, saith the Lord. And you are converts and residents with me. Leviticus 25, verses 47 and 48. And if a ger who dwells alongside you grows rich, and your brother grows poor beside him, and is sold to the ger toshav with you, or to the descendant of the ger's family, after he is sold, he may be redeemed. One of his brothers may redeem him. A convert doesn't dwell alongside you, Israel. A convert is you, Israel, right?
That's the way I would see it.
I would think so. Moving on to the fourth book of the Torah, Numbers 9:14. And if a ger shall dwell with you, and will make a Passover offering to Hashem according to the law of Passover offering, and its decree, so shall he do. One law shall be for you, for the ger, and for one who was born in the land. One shall for you, for the ger, and for one who was born in the land. That would seem to be the same thing we've been reading, but I'm going to go to Numbers in the Koran and just see. I'm pretty sure they're going to say stranger, but it's worth a shot. Numbers 9:14. And that reads, and if a stranger shall sojourn with you, and will keep the Passover offering according to the ordinance of the Passover and according to its prescribed manner, so shall he do. He shall have one ordinance both for the stranger and for him that was the native born. So he's got to circumcise. He's going to take part in the Passover. I want to mute you, Waltz.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No problem.
Cleaning, making a lot of noise. Apologize.
Gotcha. Moving right along, Numbers 15:14. And if a ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations, and will bring a fire offering, a sweet savior unto Hashem, just as you do, so shall he do. Let's try that again. I'm going to read that again. Numbers 15:14. And if a ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations. And if a ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations, and will bring a fire offering, a sweet savor unto Hashem, just as you do, so shall he do. Same standard for the non-Jew and the Jew alike. But I seriously doubt it means convert. Dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations. That means there are people who aren't Jewish among them, who aren't Israelites. So it would seem. Numbers 15:15. For the congregation, the same law shall be for you and for the ger who dwells, an eternal decree for you and for the ger who dwells with you. 15:15. The Koran. One ordinance shall be both for you and the congregation, and also for the stranger that sojourns with you. One Torah, one code shall it be for you, for the stranger that sojourns with you. Okay. Numbers 19:10. And one who gathered the ashes of the red heifer shall immerse his clothes and will be unclean until evening. And it shall be an eternal law for the children of Israel and for the ger who dwells among them. Again, it's a separation. I don't know if converts dwell. They should have a home. For the children of, this is also Numbers 35:15. For the children of Israel and for the Ger and for the settler among them shall these 6 cities be a refuge, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. So you've got the children of Israel, the Ger, and the settler among them. So then there's a third party brought it, because it's always been native born in the Ger. Now you've got the children of Israel, the Ger, and a settler among them. Over here to my handy Koran Tanakh. I warned everybody at the beginning of the show, this is going to be boring, but it's got to be done. $35.15. $35.15. These 6 cities. These 6 cities shall be a refuge, both for the children of Israel, and for the stranger, and for the sojourner among them. That everyone that kills any person unawares shall flee there, or may flee there. So you have native born, Ger, and Toshav. So here they're actually put 2 different. They're separated in the language. Quite possibly could be a pin there. So we've got a pin in Leviticus 17:10. That might be a convert, although the language is pretty much like all the others. But a new one we can put a pin in is Numbers 35:15. Because it's not necessarily a Toshav. A Toshav is separate from a Ger in this one. Whereas before it was a Ger Toshav in Leviticus 25, it was a Ger Toshav. And Avraham back in Genesis 23, I am a Ger and a Toshav, a resident. Moving right along into the final book of the Torah, Deuteronomy 15, verses 13 through 14. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath unto the Lord your God. And on it you shall do no manner of work, you and your son and your daughter and your maidservant and your manservant and your ox and your donkey and all your animals and the Ger who is within your gates, so that your manservant and your maidservant may rest like you. I mean, he mentions the Ger after the animals. Don't tell me that's a convert. It's not a convert. Deuteronomy 10:18. He carries out justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the Ger in giving him food and clothing. The fatherless, the widow, and the Ger. If you're an Israelite, you have an inheritance. The fatherless, the widow, and the Ger have no inheritance. Unless, so it can't be convert there either. Deuteronomy 14:21. You shall not eat of anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the Ger who is within your gates, that he may eat it. Or you may sell it to a Nochri, a foreigner. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Oh, let's try that again. You shall not anything that dies of itself. Nevela is what that means. You shall not eat nevela. You give it to the Ger who is within your gates, that he may eat it. Or you may sell it to a Nochri, a foreigner. You don't give converts nevela. A convert God does not permit a Jew to eat nevela. Give it to the Ger, sell it to the Nochri. This will also include by law, but I'm going into rabbinical law, but that would be an animal that if an offering didn't go as planned, it wasn't killed properly, something happened. Okay. Deuteronomy 20. Go ahead, William.
Oh no, I was listening. I was just going to say you're pretty knowledgeable. Like I totally forgot the term for nevera.
Nevela?
What?
Nevela.
Nevela. Yeah. See, you know your stuff, man. You really.
It after a while, you can't help it. It just grows on you like mold. I'm kidding.
All right, go ahead.
When I was born, my doctor told my mother said they threw away the mold, but some of it grew back. Okay. Deuteronomy 23:8. You shall not hate an Edomite because he is your brother. You shall not hate an Egyptian because you were a ger in his land. Again, not a convert. Unless you claim that an Israelite is a convert in Egypt. And if you do, I've got some questions for you, bub. Deuteronomy 24:14. You shall not oppress a hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of your brothers or of your ger who are in your land within your gates. Let's try that again. Deuteronomy 24:14. You shall not oppress a hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be one of your brothers or of your ger who are in your land within your gates.
Does it say specifically hired servant?
Yeah, and I'm going to confirm that here in the Koran. Or in Numbers, Devarim, Deuteronomy 24. Nope. 24:14. And it says, Thou shalt not oppress a hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates.
So that's where it's confusing. If you should not oppress, I guess less than, I don't know, because then why would they have slaves? Because that's clearly oppressing somebody.
Well, yeah. Hi, Wade. We're going through every verse in the Torah that has ger in it. We're almost done. I'm going to mute you because there's a bad echo right now. Thanks.
Well, sorry, I'm going to mute myself too because I'm still walking around.
We're on Deuteronomy. We just finished 24:14. Deuteronomy 24:17. You shall not prevent justice due. Here you go. You shall not pervert the justice due the ger or the orphan. You shall not, nor shall you take the clothing of a widow as a pledge. You shall not pervert justice due to the ger or the orphan, nor shall you take the clothing of a widow as a pledge. Hard to believe that you would say you do not need to, that your fellow Israelite convert isn't due justice. That seems silly. Obviously, the ger is not a convert here either. And you shall rejoice over all the good of which the Lord your God has given you, and you shall, and to your house, you and the Levite and the ger that is in the midst of you. Let's try that again. Deuteronomy 26:11. You shall rejoice over all the good which the Lord your God has given you, and to your house, you and the Levite and the ger that is in the midst of you. The convert in the midst of you. Deuteronomy 26:12. When you have completed tithing, all the tithe of your produce in the third year, the year of tithing, you shall give to the Levite, to the ger, to the orphan, and to the widow, that they may eat it within your gates and be satisfied. We could say convert, but you can't convert into the Levite nation. Orphans, widows, they have no claim to the land, if you will, no inheritance. Neither do the Levites. So it's hard for me to believe the ger in this particular verse, again, it's not a convert. You could say convert, and it wouldn't be out of place like it would saying that you were converts in Egypt. That's out of place. That makes no sense. Letting a ger have nevela. He's not a convert. You don't give a convert nevela. That's you're putting you're trying to bring you're trying to get your fellow Israelite to eat nevela. Is that what you're trying to tell me when you say it's a convert? I notice the people who think it's convert have yet to show up tonight.
Well, I thought not even non-Jews are permitted to eat nevela.
Yeah, you can give it to your ger, sure. Yeah, you can.
Hold on, divine nevela again.
The strict written Torah definition is an animal that dies of itself.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, roadkill, and it also.
Yeah, something has some kind of sickness or whatever.
Yeah, that you don't. People apparently didn't get a link. I thought I put them everywhere needed, but let me get a link out to a couple people who are asking. We'll get some more people in here. All right, that's taken care of. We're going to move right along. All right. Deuteronomy. Yeah, we're in Deuteronomy. Here we go. All right. 28:43. The ger that is among you shall ascend above you higher and higher, and you shall descend lower and lower. He will lead you, but you will not lead. You will not lend to him. He will be a head, and you will be the tail. I want to put that into context because I know where he's at, but I want to read that in context. We're in Deuteronomy 28, and I'm in the Koren Tanakh. Shalom, Rosalie. Welcome. Glad we got you in here.
Thank you. Had KP duty, so I just got done.
I hear you. All right, Devarim 28. We missed one. One who and we got this. One who perverts justice, do the ger. The fatherless, the widow, his people. Okay, cursed be one who perverts the justice, do the ger, the fatherless, and the widow. And all the people shall say, Amen. What I'm looking up here is 28:43 in the Koren Tanakh, because everyone likes this translation. Nobody seems to argue with it. And this is a big old hunk of a chapter. Here we go. The stranger that is in the midst of thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. This is about the curses and the blessings that you get with the Torah. Okay? It's not a command. We're not poskening here. He's giving you the result of what will happen if you don't keep to the Torah. So I want to read it again. I want to read it doing we're going to do the convert dance again with this one. The convert that is among you shall ascend above you higher and higher, and you shall descend lower and lower. And he will lend to you, but you will not lend to him. He will be the head, and you will be the tail. The convert that is among you shall ascend above you higher. It's supposed to be a curse. Don't get it. I don't think that's a convert either. Two more to go in the written Torah. All the times, and we've got a pin in 2 that could quite possibly be convert if you read them in and of themselves. We'll get back to that, but here it's Deuteronomy 29 verses 9 and 10. You are all standing here today, all of you, before Hashem your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and your ger that is in the midst of your camp, from the hewer of your wood to the drawer of your water. Again, all of you, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officers, all the men of Israel, period. Your little ones, your wives, and your ger that is in the midst of your camp, from the hewer of your wood to the drawer of your water. Convert? Could we say convert there? Could we say The tribal heads, your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and your convert that is in the midst of your camp. That could be. All right, 3 pins so far. One, I'm going to take the pin out of the one in back in Numbers. But
The Hebrew Bible says convert.
what do you mean? What it says? Ger. That's the word they use. Where does it say? What?
In the Hebrew Bible that I'm looking at, which is a complete Jewish Bible with Rashi commentary, it says, your young children, your women, and your convert who is within your camp, both your woodcutters and your water drawers.
That is interesting. The Quran has you stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your captains, the captains of your tribes, your elders, and your officers, with all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and thy stranger that is in thy camp, from the hewer of thy wood to the drawer of the water. That's from the Quran. So whoever said convert, I don't know. Stranger, again, it's always stranger in the Quran. And it depends on your translation. It's other stuff like convert there. Maybe it could be. Finally, Deuteronomy 31:12, assemble the people, the men and the women and all the little ones and your ger that is within your gates, so that they may hear and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and be careful to perform all the words of his Torah.
Now, see, in that verse that you have, it says you're strangers in your cities. It doesn't say convert.
Huh. It's like they can put convert in there whenever they want. So there was one place here that I thought that was interesting that we read earlier. It was, let's see. We separate the servant. It's got the toshav, the ger, and the native born. Usually it's the native born or the house of Israel and the ger who dwells among you. But there's one. Let's see if I can find it here where it was. Hang on. A hired worker. A hired worker. Oh, we heard this earlier. We were looking at this earlier. There's one time it separates. It's Deuteronomy 24:14. Not oppress a hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be one of your brothers or of the ger who are in your land within your gates. That seemed to be a good qualifier. Ger or native born. We have one where they call him a ger toshav, another one where they separate ger and resident, and that's the separation of ger and resident that I'm looking for. But it's on the tape. It's been recorded. It's there. It's for posterity anyway. And another one that we looked at was Leviticus 7:10. Any man of the house Israel or of the ger who dwells among them, who will consume any blood, I shall turn my attention to the soul of who consumed the blood, and I will cut him off from all his people. Again, when you've got verses like you can eat nevela, when it's the congregation of, and he's, I was a stranger in a strange, I was a ger in a strange land. He can't be convert. Moses didn't convert in Israel. You were gerim in Israel. You weren't converts. Unless there's some midrash I haven't heard of, Israel did not, or they can say, well, they converted when all the miracles happened and they believed, and you could pull that bunch of hunk of BS. Nothing in the text is going to back that kind of stuff up. Nothing in the text actually supports any of these people being a convert. It said you actually have to circumcise. Well, if a ger has to be circumcised, obviously there's some uncircumcised ger running around here. And if you're not circumcised, you're not an Israelite. You're not of the house, the stock of Jacob. I can't find one thing. You could take any of these verses of themselves and shoehorn convert in there. But in the context of the Torah itself, you can say, I mean, some people would say, Will was saying this is kind of confusing. I don't think it's confusing. I think it's just flat out wrong. It's a myth. And that's all it is. Ger are not converts. If they were converts, then you have to call Naaman a convert. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something in the Hebrew that I don't know of. I haven't researched it. I mean, you did a really good job at pulling up all of those scriptures. But in all honesty, I mean, I have to look at it. But in all honesty, I don't think in the verses it distinguishes. I think it always says ger. So I think right. It's poetic license that the Jewish court, that they took.
When the people translated it, maybe it's just been out of the consciousness of Israel that they would have people among them. They've been among.
What I'm saying is that because all that's based on halacha, right? So it comes straight from the Sanhedrin. So at what point, now it is possible that they understood the verse a different way. I was explaining this to someone, like, for example, let me ask you a question. What's the legal age to drink in the United States?
I think it's 21 everywhere.
All right.
My guess.
So if you noticed what I just said, I deliberately omitted alcohol.
Huh.
I said, what's the legal age to drink? And you understood in the context of the history and the laws, you understood it to be alcohol. But if we were to write that down and, 2,000 years later, they're like, what? You can't drink until you're 21? Oh, what a bunch of crap. They'd be dead. So if you don't understand the historical context, and that's what I'm thinking, perhaps what this whole ger thing is. What's confusing, though, is that if every verse is using the same word, maybe it's just context what determines whether this is a convert or not. Kind of like what we just described with the legal age to drink. Just the theory, of course.
It's hard not to go into halakha. It's hard not to go into the to Jewish law, to the midrash, or the midrash, excuse me, the Mishnah, because then that's where it gets complicated. Then you have the circumcised bits, and is he circumcised? Did he dunk? Did he circumcise himself? Was he accepted by the best din? All that stuff. Then it gets really mixed up. But just on the text, there's absolutely nothing definitive that can say it's a convert. Especially when he separates ger from koshav and ger from native born, and always associates the gerim with either animals or servants or people who have no inheritance, like Levites, orphans, and widows. Wait, you're going to say something? Welcome, Aaron. Shalom.
Yeah, shalom. Sometimes, and I'd like to ask the group just their opinion. And I already probably know the answer for you, James. But sometimes, I believe in God and always have. But sometimes, especially since I've left Christianity, I know there's a God. I believe in there's a God. But I really want to, I don't know, run away screaming because there's so many different oh, you can do this, you can't do that, you can do this, you can't do that, you can do this, you can't do that. To where I'm like, you know what? Maybe this ain't my game. Maybe this ain't my team. Maybe I'm just the dog beside the dad, whoever. You know what? I'm tired of. It's just
Maybe it's Satan testing you.
frustrating. No, it's not Satan. It's the people. Satan don't have to do nothing. All he got to do is sit back and watch and say, "Damn, I wouldn't have said that." I mean, shit. People are meaner than that. Uh, I'm just. It's just. I feel like I'm fighting uphill. I try to learn. I try to go forward, move forward. But it seems like people want to pull the rug out from under you. You try to learn, you try to do, and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I hear that in the questions that you asked, like tonight, converts against Noahides, against Gers,
Or verse, yeah.
against this and that. Yeah, trying to get an understanding and why. That's what I hear from you. And, I've tried to do that myself. I try to understand and go by what the Torah says and get a clear understanding because what I understand is Judaism goes off of Torah first and foremost. That is the bedrock. Everything else is commentary.
Hmm.
So, but I don't know if that's true sometimes.
Well, that's a good jumping off point.
Well, I think
Um,
I just jumped off.
no, that's a good point because I want to bring up. Okay, there's contention, and about the seven laws. The big thing is a while back the Rebbe said, we should be teaching the nations the seven laws. When they come to you and ask, give them this to study first. That was the one thing, and it's been translated into basically a religion where you just keep this and go on. The Noahide, I'm wondering, and I don't know if anybody is versed. It needs to be versed, but I'm wondering if Nochri and Noahide is Noahide. Is that properly Noahide? Nochri. I'm wondering about the similarities, because when the foreigner comes into Israel, he's going to have to keep the seven just to be able to dwell among them. He can't murder, he can't steal, he can't fraud anybody, right? He's going to be keeping the seven, whether he believes it or not. He might have Shiva waiting for Shiva or whatever, waiting for him back on his boat or whatever. He might have a Molech statue somewhere, whatever. But while he's in Israel, he behaves. A ger, according to halakha, it stands before three elders, three officers of the court, three judges, and takes a vow that says, yes, I keep the seven for Hashem's sake. It's not just you have to use this to behave. It's a step further. Then you get some benefits. No one says rest the Nochri. It says rest your ger when he's in your land. Okay, I know there's no ger toshav, but just on the text alone, and with that as a supplement to the text and not of itself. You don't circumcise the Nochri or his children. The Nochri doesn't live under the same law that you do as an Israelite. But the Nochri has to keep the seven laws. The thing about the Noahide thing is that it is the dividing line. When you are a Noahide, you are a Nochri in most people's eyes, because there's a fat load of you can't do this like a Jew, particularly Sabbath. Obviously, with things like the Passover. Another thing that says if the ger gets circumcised, he's like the native born. No, he is the native born. He shall be treated as he will be the native born. I think that's what it says. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Okay, yeah, it was Exodus 24:48. And when the ger shall dwell with you and keep the Passover of the Lord, let all the males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as one that is born in the land. But no uncircumcised person may eat it. So that separates it as one born in the land. Another verse says like one born in the land. This one says is as one in the land. At that point. Okay. So a Nochri is a Noahide. A stam, what we call stam Noahide. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to say it can be. I mean, the Nochri can be a Ger Toshav, but he can't be a Noahide or a Ben Noach. A Ben Noach says, I'm leaving idolatry. So this term in Noahide is basically just a modernized term of Ben Noach, or the Chasidi Umot Haolam, right? Noahide is not a non-existent term, but when you go back biblically, you have the Nochri, who is an idolater, and he can also be the Ger Toshav, because the Ger Toshav doesn't distinguish, at least biblically, it doesn't say, oh, you have to drop idolatry. That's only when we get into rabbinics. And the definitions in rabbinics are fairly defined. It's when you try to say, it's when somebody tries to say, all right, let me define this by the Torah, and then you bring in terms that are rabbinic terms, that it can create a bunch of confusion. I personally don't see it as all that confusing, but that's probably because I spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to study this subject, because it was extraordinarily confusing to me 4 years ago. And I guess I could go on just a little bit to say the reason I don't necessarily find it confusing is because the Ger, the actual convert, he takes on all the mitzvot. The Ger Toshav is just somebody that lives in the land. And so the Ger becomes like the people, except for he doesn't have a place. He doesn't have a tribal affiliation outside of the Levites, which is what God gives the tribal affiliation to, along with the orphans and the widows. It's the convert has no family, right? So once you convert, you're now a Jew, and you're no longer anything else, but you don't have a father or a grandfather or anything. So you're like the orphan and the widow. You have no family. Therefore, you fall under the tribe of the Levites.
So why does the Ger get Nevela if he's a convert?
Well, that particular Ger is a Ger Toshav, which could be a Ben Noach or it could be a Nochri, depending on that particular Ger's, the Ger Toshav's situation. Because clearly, right, the Ger, a convert, can't get Nevela, or he violates one of the prohibitions of being Israel, and then you have to throw out the parts where it says that he is he's like, or he is as one of the people of Israel.
Well, the thing is, the text doesn't say Ger Toshav. It says this particular verse: "You shall not eat nevela. You give it to the Ger who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you sell it to a Nochri. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God." When you can say there's no distinction of Ger Toshav or Ger or whatever. That's not in this verse. And I can qualify that there's several times it says that you were Gerim in Egypt. Well, they weren't converts.
Right.
And well, Avraham says, I was a Ger and a Toshav. He's not a convert. I mean,
well, that's the thing. It's like, Ger is a wiggle word. Ger can mean convert. It can be it can be a stranger. It literally just means a stranger, right? A Ger just means an alien or a stranger.
There's a foreigner and a stranger in the Korin Tanakh, which was my backup source. And every time it says stranger, it never says convert.
Right.
You were.
But context tells us that there's a difference in these two. I mean, it says
where's the person in the written Torah that the context gives away that it's a convert?
Okay, the Ger within your gates gets Nevela, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the Ger that eats Passover, who circumcises himself, who is like Israel, or who is considered as Israel, if he's considered as Israel, then he is obligated to the same laws that the Israelites, hence the verse that says, there is one law for you and the ger.
Sure.
And that ger at that point is under the exact same law that Israel is. So if that ger at that point is under the same law that Israel is, that means that when we talk about the ger who gets nevela, we're talking about a different.
Well, he stops being
person.
He stops being ger because when he says it's when he's circumcised, he shall be as one that is born in the land. And it's not, then he stops being ger. He was already ger, and then he is as one in the land.
Right.
And all the
So
other
once this sin, whomever.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was saying once this stranger comes in, whoever the stranger is or wherever he's from, when the stranger comes in, as he just walks in the door, he may be an idolater, and they just say, hey, look, you've got to, there's these basic rules of the land you have to be by, whatever. And then he may say, you know what, I'm not going to be an idolater. So then he moves up a little bit further, if you will, towards, being something else. And he can eat nevela because he's a stranger, but he's not an Israelite. Once he becomes an Israelite, he's still a stranger amongst the nation, but he no longer can... he's no longer allowed to eat nevela once he gets to that point, because there's another distinction where it says the ger is not allowed, the Cohen is not allowed to marry a ger.
Right.
It's very clear the Cohen is not allowed to marry a non-Israelite person at all. So why make the other distinction to say he's not, not allowed to marry the ger? The reason that they make the other distinction is because that ger is now a convert, and if they didn't make a distinction, you would think that, oh, well, now he is a full Israelite, so he can marry anybody he's not, or that he wants. Sorry, not that he's not. So I think it's one of those wiggle words. It's like in Hebrew, there's a bunch of different words that have 7 different words that they could mean, and then the greater context defines what it is. But without rabbinics, we have zero, in my opinion, we have zero definition of the Torah to begin with. We have, Paleo or Masoretic text, depending on your, what your school of thought is, without any vowel points. So we don't even know what the wording is without having the rabbinic system that's there. And so the rabbinic system then, piles all this other stuff on, and it does get very, very confusing. But it's like trying to sit down and figure out the entire legal code for, criminal activity in America. No one person can ever do that. It takes, or unless they're just a genius, it takes a compilation of people that sit together and study bits and pieces and come together to hash these things out. Congress, House, Senate, the same kind of system that we have in place with lawyers and everything else. And if any one of us just went down to the local library and started picking up law books, it would be super confusing, especially if we tried to say, well, this isn't what the Constitution says, because it doesn't lay out this particular thing in the Constitution. I think most times, at least I did this in the first few years of me coming to Torah, I put my emotional frustration and God out there, and I put it on like this pedestal to make it like it's... because it's God's word, then it has to be, this clear-cut thing. And I just didn't see it in the same logical light that I do today when I've sat there and said, the Torah is foul. It's flawed in the fact that you cannot pick up the Torah and live by the Torah. There's just things in there that, that don't tell you, it doesn't tell you all the details. And this ger, Noahide, convert, it's these conflated terms are not as conflated in Talmudic sources. It's fairly defined, but how you talk about it in today's society is not so defined, because we haven't had us non-Jews haven't talked about it in a long time.
Carla, what say you?
Nothing at this moment. I'm just kind of listening.
All right.
I kind of came in the middle of the conversation, so I'm not really sure what's going on.
I had read, and when I started out, I was alone, but I was figured this would be the pretty much the gist of the hangout. Was I went through every one of the 30 some odd verses in the written Torah where the word Ger or Gerim, or for that matter, Moshe's son Gershom, were brought up. For I was a Ger in Egypt. Be kind to the Ger, for you were once Ger in Egypt. You know, I was a stranger in a strange land. You will be Gerim with me in Israelite. Convert doesn't work anywhere. You can fudge it, I think, on 3. We found 3. We could maybe fudge Deuteronomy 29, 9, and 10. Leviticus 17, 10. And that's it, because 1248 clarifies 1219. It says, whether he be a Ger or one that is born in the land, 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 over and over and over. There's a distinction made between you and the one who dwells among you, in the midst of you. And then it all comes back to Exodus 12:14. If a Ger dwells among you and decides to keep Passover, he and his son sacrificed, or well, I guess you could say that, circumcised. Then he shall be as one that is born in the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. That's a fudge, but that would say that there's a Ger uncircumcised. There's a Ger uncircumcised. You can't say the word Ger is a convert. Any man of the house of Israel, or the Ger that dwells among them. In Leviticus, you know, it's always this distinction, you and the Ger. It makes no sense to say convert.
Well, and I will agree with you on this part, that if somebody's saying that every time it says Ger, it's a convert.
Yes, I've had 2 rabbis tell me that already.
Yeah, they're lying out of their ass. Just the same as every time if somebody says, "Oh, every time it says Ger, it's not a convert." It's you can't define those 2 letters with such a hard definition, because I mean, if that was the case, then there wouldn't even be there wouldn't even be like a halakhic conversation later on, right? It says, Ger Toshav versus Ger Tzedek.
Right.
These terms wouldn't even be used later if that's what it meant. So I agree. I mean, most times that it's used, it just means stranger. It doesn't mean like actual convert. It's,
John brought up last week, he's not here, but John brought up last week, he was talking about the Rebbe brought up, he said that Noahides are Gerim. And he kept saying they're converts. And they should keep all of the law. And yet there's so many laws in the Torah that make way for the Ger. He can't keep all. Nobody keeps all the laws. Nobody can keep every one of 613. No person can. Does that mean they reject the law? I mean, can you say that he accepts the law, but even that part that doesn't pertain to him, he's still under this, if it's like the same law for you and for the stranger, well, if that's the same law and the law gives credence to the stranger, it seems like you could be a stranger in Israel and still be under the law and not have to be snipped and clipped or snipped and dipped. It seems like it said not only where was that? It was for the Ger and for the one who dwells with you for perpetual generations. Where was that? Hang on a minute. And it was like, one who continuously dwells. It was a weird, hang on.
And I agree with what you're saying. I mean, there is a Ger that is, there's a Noahide Ger, there's a Nochri Ger, there's a, convert Ger, there's a Ger before there was even such a thing as Israel.
Hang on a minute. Where is that? Oh,
there's a Ger that's, that's circumcised, and now he's like Israel or like one of them, but he's not officially one of them without getting into Talmudics, even according to the Torah, he's not officially one because he has a marriage restriction according to the Torah, or she, to be politically correct.
just found it. Hang on, I just lost it. There it is. This is what I thought was interesting. Numbers 15:14. And if a ger dwells with you, or one who, if a ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations, and will bring a fire offering, a sweet savor unto Hashem, just as you do, shall he do. So one standard and an elevation offering. We've heard that a couple times. But I thought that was interesting. If a ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generations. I want to look at that. It's Numbers 15:14. I want to go in my Quran here. See if we can get any.
That would sound to me like what we're saying is if you have a Noahide / ger, or you have a convert, then you have to. I mean, I could, in the Talmud, it talks about these things like, a non-Jew, even an idolatrous non-Jew is allowed to bring an offering, but it has to be of the right species. It has to be, it has to, follow the same parameters.
Right.
Now that was Numbers 15:14.
Yes, and if a stranger sojourn with you, or whoever may be among you throughout your generations, and will offer an offering made of fire, of a sweet savor to the Lord, as you do, so shall he do.
Now, on the one that I've got, it says a proselyte.
Another word for convert, isn't it?
If a proselyte resides with you, or those among you in future generations, and he offers up a fire offering of pleasing fragrance to the Lord, as you make it, so shall he make it.
Isn't that interesting? Because we just heard that even an idolater, so long as he does it right in the Talmud, right? That's halakha. That's Mishnah.
Yeah, you go down to 6. You go down to 16. It says, "There shall be one law and one ordinance for you and the proselytes who live with you." That's in 16.
I won't speak for everybody, but I can say one of my biggest hangups in my initial coming into Torah was not wanting to just accept the definitions given down by Chazal. So if Chazal said over here it means this is a convert, and over here this is a non-Jew, I would get hung up on that because I'm like, well, that's not what it says. Who are you to say this? And like I said before, I mean, when I realized that you can't even read, if you pick up a Dead Sea Scroll, you have no idea what it says without the rabbinic tradition that tells you where the vowel points go, and that could change the text big time. At least for me, I just had to I got to a place where I'm like, I'm gonna trust the rabbinic opinions on it, and realize that there's not one solid opinion on every little piece, but there's a pretty solid opinion on the majority of what's there. We just, as a non-Jew, came to it thinking that it was the way that I saw it, and not the way that the Jewish people have seen it for the past 3,000. What are we at? 3,400 and some years since Sinai. So I would, hope and encourage anybody that hears this and listens, that gets frustrated, that gets pissed off with Torah, gets pissed off with Judaism, to just tough it out, and eventually your mind will clear and you'll be able to see things in a little more acceptable way a more palatable way for yourself.
So the reason why I was bringing up the Nochri is because what we're taught in the basic Noahide tradition is that everybody was given the 7 Noahide laws via Noah. It was one law for all mankind to keep. I've also heard it said that a commentary that said that the Noahide law stopped counting when Israel was given Torah. Then it didn't count for all human beings unless you came through Israel to get it. So it's contradictory. I mean, yeah, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. But the reason why I say that is if they're giving this as a law, a Torah-based law for the rest of the world, that would mean that what they're giving them is for the Nochri. It would seem to me he was basically a Nochri. He's not of Israel. See, with the ger, the idea of the ger is that he stands with Israel. I don't care if he's a slave or was a slave or a dude like me or maybe like John who took refuge. I mean, bring up somebody who's not here. Sorry, John. But there's a difference, and that's just a modern thing. So that's why I put Noahide and Nochri up there, because in my opinion, they're just about the same thing. A ger toshav, you can be a Noahide, keep 7 Noahide laws, and not believe in God. A ger toshav really can't ignore God like that. He goes before Bet Din and takes the law for his sake. You're doing it for something greater to be according to halakha. And when you brought up Ben Noach, which is a difference than a Noahide. A Noahide is a very new word, a very new concept, a nice way to call you a Nochri, in my opinion. The Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, I think it's Hilchot Malachim, or maybe that. No, or is that Mishnah? Or is that Mishnah Torah?
Mishnah Torah, you're right.
Okay. It says that. Okay, then I'm somewhere else. Where was it? Hang on. The Rambam says it's not Hilchot Malachim. He doesn't say, he said these ger toshav. When a Ben Noach has a dispute and brings it before you, when two Ben Noach, and then he goes down and say these ger toshavim, which is he called them ger toshavim. He considered them also a Ben Noach to be he pretty much, it was pretty blatant there. You know what I mean?
Well, the Rambam also considers a slave, an Eved Kanani, to be a ger toshavim as well. One who
they have to take the Noahide law. They have to get have to make Kabbalah. They have to go before the Bet Din.
Well,
after a law, the law says after a year, if your slave doesn't take the 7, you have to get rid of him or kill him. And it was laws of kings, by the way, 10:9 and 10:10, where the Rambam uses both the word. He used the word ger toshav to liken to the Ben Noach, that they're the same.
I agree with you. I mean, the Noahide religion that they've formed is just that. I mean, it's not. The Rambam brings about these ideas to begin with. He brings about the 7 laws, and the Rambam says that they have to be that basically a Noahide or a Ben Noach has to accept the laws, the 7 laws, and one who is pious has to accept that they were given at Sinai. So then the Noahides turn around and say, "Oh, well, these laws were given to Noah," and that's a midrashic interpretation. But they're following the specific 7 laws that the Rambam brings down, but then they're not going to follow how the Rambam says that they have to be pious to be outside of it. So then there's this conflated line that's in there. And I have a big bone to pick with those guys too.
Mm-hmm.
I just think people should follow Judaism and just, not be a this or be a that, but just follow Judaism. Be either a non-Jew who's following Judaism or be a Jew who's following Judaism.
Because there's a place in Torah for both.
Absolutely. And I think there's a place for an idolater, because where in Torah do we ever see that God says, go outside of the land of Israel and abolish idolatry in Asia or in, Europe? Or it never does. It's just Israel. It's only Israel that there's sanctity in. And I think, we can obviously learn something ourselves from that, but there's a place for the idolater. There's a place for the guy who's tired of being an idolater and doesn't want to be a Jew. and there's a place for the guy that wants to do, everything that God has commanded. And I think these terms are already defined, they're already there, the system's already been there, and people get hung up, Noahide leaders, I don't know. I don't want to throw a bunch of people under the bus, but all these people that are trying to break off from normative Orthodox Judaism stances, I don't see it as a good thing for the people that are involved in it. I think it just it pulled me away from the source that I wanted, which was Torah and Judaism, and not to be hung somewhere out to dry, whether I be a Noahide or a Ger.
There's one I'm going to look. I'm going to look in here to make sure it's going to say Nochri. But Leviticus 25:23 says, "The land shall not be sold in perpetuity. The land is mine, and you are Haran and residents with me." So you're like Avraham was, a Ger and a Toshav. And then you turn right around here in Leviticus 25:47. Give me a second here. That says, if a Ger, okay, hang on a minute. I read you the wrong one about residents. Hang on. Okay, there's a separation. Where he separates the hired hand, the Ger, okay, well, what I'm looking at in Leviticus 25, it says Ger Toshav. 47 and 48, and when I'm looking in the Koran, and if a sojourner or stranger grow rich, that would be Ger Toshav. Or if a Ger who dwells alongside you grows rich, and your brother goes poor beside him, and is sold to the Ger Toshav. So I'm looking here. Stranger or sojourner by thee is how they break that down. But the language.
What was that chapter verse?
Leviticus 25, 47, and 48. So, and he calls him an actual Ger Toshav. So to the Ger Toshav, or a descendant of the Ger's family. And then, there you go. Aaron's back. Welcome back, Aaron.
Sorry, what was the verse that you were in?
Leviticus 25, 47. Okay, and then Numbers 20. Okay, this is what I was also going to compare it to. Numbers, because we have an actual Ger Toshav. And if a Ger who dwells alongside you grows rich, and your brother goes poor beside him and is sold to the Ger Toshav, and that's in Torah. And then you come over here to Numbers 15, 14. And if a Ger dwells with you, or one who is among you throughout your generation. Okay, that's not it. Where's the hired? Will, you remember, because you were here and we were talking about that. That was the hired hand, and it was the separation of a hired hand. And
yeah, I don't remember where it was, but it
me
said,
either.
Yeah, it said it said that you shouldn't mistreat the hired servant, something like that. I mean, I was a little confused with that one.
I think it's try verse 39.
In Leviticus or Numbers?
Leviticus. What? Leviticus 25.
Well, Okay, Numbers 35:15. The children of Israel, and for the Ger, and for the settler among them, shall these 6 cities be a refuge, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. That's Numbers 35:15. There's an actual separation of the Ger and for the settler. The children of Israel, Ger, and the settler, 3 different people. Numbers 35. A lot of page turning. This is no show. This is yeshiva time. This is study time. What do I know of yeshiva? I pretend. 35:15. Yeah, 6 cities shall be both for the children of Israel, for the stranger, and for the sojourner among them. So then the Ger and the sojourner are separated. Let me see if I can.
You're on 35:15, and they're telling you that there's 3 different people there.
The Koren Tanakh breaks it up. Shall be a refuge, both for the children of Israel, and for the stranger, and for the sojourner among them.
Okay, I see why. Because it says Yisrael, Valager, and then Valatoshav, which would mean and to the Ger and to the Toshav.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, among them. But that.
That's interesting. One time they're the same thing, and another time they're not.
What? I mean, to me, that's one of those spots where there's clearly the Israelite, the convert, and then the non-Jew who's, dwelling there.
I was told I was second class being Ger, and yet the Torah says don't treat them like they're second class.
Yeah, well, there's assholes all around. It's not the way, but it's at the same time treating people like Noahide is almost just as bad, because instead of telling them that they're second, instead of saying, hey, you're over here or this or that or the other thing, they pretend like it's an inside thing. They'll tell the Noahide, oh yeah, Noahideism is Judaism for the Jewish guy, or for the non-Jewish guy. Sorry, and that's not what it is at all. It's a separate entity. Because ask most of them, they'll tell you, oh, I'm Noahide. They don't ever say I'm a non-Jew who follows Judaism. So they're being given, anyways. It pisses me off on both sides. I don't think that it's a second-class status. I think it's a place of coming in, and somebody who resides, somebody who toshavs, doesn't have a permanent citizenship. So how can it be a permanent place? It's not saying one who, becomes or joins or lives, as part of. It's one who resides. Toshav. So I don't see it as out of the pronunciation. I mean, you could pronounce it as settled, but I just see it as a temporary position, and sometimes temporary is 3 lifetimes, and not necessarily all in one.
Or someone who lives without you throughout your generations. 15:14. It means there's a non-Jew who lives you throughout your generations.
Hopefully. I mean, how else can you reach the world? How else does Israel spread and become larger and, not become inbred? I mean, you've got to get some other gene pool in there, if nothing else. So there's got to be a non-Jew that comes in every now and again and it's like, hey, I want to hang out with you guys. And, maybe his kids or grandkids end up, converting if he doesn't convert. But without a non-Jew hanging around the Jews, then it gets inbred, you know.
Yeah, and when people say our Jewish brothers don't want us and we're rejects, I had a girl leave the Orphans Facebook group because I said I'm not so sure of that. That the Jews hate you, the Jews are going to treat you like shit, so become Jewish, just not with them. I'm not so sure the Jews hate us. I'll be honest with you. 10 years ago, most Jews, observant or not, didn't even know what a Noachide or a Ben Noach was. I'm dead serious. They had no idea what I was talking about. Now it's a bit different. I mean, 10 years, a lot can happen. Yeah, but early on, nobody even knew what I was. They just kind of look at you funny, like you're talking about a piece of wood. Noahide. Maybe it's because they were so deep into the halakha, they didn't know these newfangled terms people were using. 20th century inventions. I think it's important because if we don't talk about this, if we don't get this clear up, and then we say, oh, they're just converts, it's all converts, convert. And I am on a completely different polar opposite on Rabbi Asher Meza on this one. I don't believe you just become Jewish. You can't become Jewish without the people. You have to be a nation. You have to be united. You have to come together. I don't see how you could be either. I don't see how you
Welcome
can go
to
Jewish.
the room, Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi. I don't see how you can become Jewish and not become part of the nation. If you're not part of the nation, what's the point? If you're not having Jewish babies, what's the point? But anyway, we just went through every verse in the Torah, in the written Torah, that has Gershom, Gerim, or Ger. And I can't find convert out of any of it, except maybe two places. We put a pin in two particular verses that leave one, and then we've got them separated from the Toshav, and then we have them with the Toshav, and then we've got the Israelite, the Ger, and the Toshav. We have the Ger, but he's a Ger who's not circumcised, that gets circumcised and becomes as of, and God will say he is as one of you, or one of the native born. And then when he's telling them not to taunt them later on, and I guess it's Deuteronomy, he's like, I guess it's a few times throughout the Torah. He's like, don't be cruel to the be cruel to the Ger. For you were once Ger in Egypt. So my point is, and my thing is that not one time we've got a maybe on two that we can argue that I might be able to have my mind changed, but it can't mean a convert because there are too many examples given where it could not possibly apply to a convert. And if you feel free to change my mind on this, I'm an open mind. I've had people open me up on a couple things, but I still stand by that one. Mm-hmm. You want to try?
Well, the word ger is a descriptive term.
I'm just
right, for sure.
Okay.
Only written Torah, where it's a descriptive term. It's not a title. It's never a title. So someone to say that means someone who picks and chooses what law he wants to keep and is accepted by God in some way, that's already someone making up their own religion. It just means a stranger. That's all it means. Now, it could be a stranger who walks in God's ways, or it could be a stranger who happens to reside in the land when Israel comes to occupy it. It just means stranger, right? That's all it means. So just knowing that is enough to know that this is not something to aspire to. That's it. Now clearly, with there are Gerim that have to keep everything, there are Gerim who don't keep everything. It shows that it's just a descriptive term. It just means a stranger.
Yeah.
It's to walk around, like starting synagogues called Beit Gerim, or like sewing the word ger on kippot. It's really making a new religion out of nothing. It's doing a lot with a very little. Okay, and worse, for him to say, and I know he changed his mind on this, that it's the fourth holy house of Israel. That's really creative thinking. It's just not there. Now, what Rashi says there, where it says the ger lo toneh, that a stranger, like you shouldn't mistreat because you were strangers in Egypt.
Not converts in Egypt? Holy cow. I've had
English. No.
If it's a convert, then I want to hear this story about the Israelites converting in Egypt.
No,
I haven't heard. That's a new one.
The word ger. Okay, we have to separate what is used colloquially in rabbinic literature and today, and what appears in the Torah. In Torah, it's just a descriptive term. Yeah, there's a lot of developed ideas.
It's a guy. It's a certain
right. Yeah, but it's not a status. It's not a status. It's just, it just means docile Gentile. That's all it means. Gentile or docile stranger. That's all it means. Even Israelites are called gerim. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I don't think anyone walks around saying that ger in Torah always means convert, right? Only someone who doesn't know the text, because clearly there's some gerim that don't keep all of Torah. Right, so this is why when someone makes the argument, right, and they make the argument to someone who's not familiar with Scripture, and they're like, "Wow, you guys have a point." Ger can't mean convert, but that's someone who hasn't studied the text. Obviously, any rabbi will tell you that every time it says ger in Torah, it doesn't mean convert, right? It just means stranger. Sometimes that stranger is a convert. Sometimes he's not a convert. That's it.
I've only found 2 verses that it could possibly in any way mean convert.
No.
Everything else is pretty. I mean,
the word ger doesn't mean convert; it just means stranger.
Rosalie was reading the translation, and they would say proselyte, which is convert, and then literally use the word convert. I think it was the same translation from earlier in the Torah, like in Numbers it was convert, and in Deuteronomy it was proselyte. They use these
but it's convert versus
like witchcraft. It's like they're BSing us,
Convert versus what? Like what's the opposite? Or like, what are you saying it means?
If I say convert, because me personally, are you asking me like James Rogers?
No, if you're saying that it doesn't mean converted, I'm not saying, I don't think any rabbi will tell you that it always means converts. What does it mean to you?
A friendly stranger. You say docile? Yeah.
Docile. That's it. Yeah.
Trust.
But it's nothing to aspire to be proud of, and worse, like to say that they keep 7 laws or a basis of 7 laws or even monotheistic, right?
Well, you have to keep the 7.
Why?
If you because
I thought you said that we were sticking to written law only.
I thought the written law says if you don't, doesn't the oh, well, if we're going to stick, you brought up Rashi and you're bringing up the Rambam.
No, I'm just telling you how he read with the notion of convert, that he agrees with you that doesn't mean convert, but he says, that goes back to what I was saying about Rashi, whether he says there that a ger you shouldn't mistreat is anyone, whether he's in the covenant or not, whether he's an Israelite or not, who happens not to live in the land of Israel, but returns to Israel and who's now a foreigner or an immigrant. Don't mistreat him.
Right.
Because of the state of Israel, we view Israelites like we view the French and the Irish, like they're just like, a nation with just like any other nation. There's clearly no convert in the Torah. There's clearly no Jew in the Torah, right? And Israelite doesn't mean that you're holy at all, because we know that the vast majority of Israelites didn't even enter the land. The word is in the covenant. Now, there are gerim who are in the covenant, and there are native born who are in the covenant too. Now, if you view it like that, then there's no resentment. There's nothing to get mad at. But that we're stuck with this Chabad terminology: Jew, convert. The word convert doesn't exist in the Torah. Convert does not exist in the Torah. It seems that people enter the covenant as quick as they wanted to. That's it. But they saw the way the tide was heading, and that's it. And they hopped on board. But no, what do you mean? Like, how can it be converts? It took them 2 years to convert. Where's the mikvah? Where's it denying them 3 times? There are all this. I mean, people are stupid. There's
like this, like you'll say to all the children of Israel, or to the house, nobody from the house of Israel. There's certain wording that seems to be kind of giveaway as to who they're talking about.
Right.
And right now,
the majority of them were the mixed multitude. If it wasn't for that mixed multitude in there, I'm telling you, it's like God put it in there so I can make my argument. Because if it wasn't for that, then I really wouldn't see any hope for Gentiles in this world, right? Because then it would seem that it's a tribal system, right? That God is a tribal God. But because of that freaking mixed multitude of Hittites and Midianites and everyone, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, everyone was there. And it shows that we're all equally special and equally worthless to God. We're all the same. It's what we do with it, you know? But it's this reverse racism that the rabbis have passed on to us. Like, oh, the word Jew, Gentile, you're a Gentile. Well, you can't, you know, you're not a Jew. You have to break Torah. You have to this. Let's stop thinking about that. Let's start with what the Torah says. There's people who are outside the covenant who come near the covenant and enter the covenant. That's it. Trust me, I'm pretty sure back then no one walked around saying you're a convert or you're an outsider and I'm a native. Nobody cares. Now, clearly, later on, Rabbinic Judaism made distinctions, but that's rabbinic. Let's make a distinction between what's Torah and what's rabbinic. All right. Anyways, I have my show starting in 8 minutes. I welcome all you guys. Late night Torah, Rabbi Asher Meza, 10 o'clock. There's going to be a link on my web page on Facebook, and I'll put it in the Orphans of Avraham too. So please be there.
Thanks for stopping by, Asher. Be well.
All right, man. Okay, man.
Hello.
Bye.
So, the house of Israel or the ger who dwells among them, and that was what I was bringing up last week, because there was no, he never told God to bring a mixed multitude. God even called them Moshe's people, didn't call them my people. He sets deliberately in last week's parsha. This was key in my book. Is the 12 tribes are set up in a certain place around the Holy of Holies. That where God dwells among them. This place, you know. Where does the mixed multitude fit in? Oh, they were instantly Jewish. They instantly converted. Okay, so who went to what tribe? Do you seriously think a person who saw which way the wind was blowing? Maybe they were friends of Jews. We don't know, but they came out with them. Am I really supposed to think after all they went through that they just instantly were intermingling in their families? Family means something. I know it's not supposed to. Where's the family means something? Where's that in Torah? Okay, whatever. But the tribes are set up deliberately. There has to be a place for those who aren't of those tribes. In their midst, you know, maybe you've got a shack out back, or maybe you're on the skin, and that's the colloquial term that was told to me. That makes much more sense. Those who cling on to Israel, like in Isaiah, you know, you had this. They would have to go somewhere, but they would. I don't see how they could just instantly become part of the tribe. So there's got to be a place for them, even in Israel.
Wouldn't it be Ephraim and Manasseh, even though they were born from a Gentile woman? And that Jacob said that he would be a greater nation come out of Ephraim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, John.
Hey, what's happening? What's going on?
Okay. Well, we've gone through all the verses, all the 30 some odd verses. Not every one, or all the ones that we've also included where Gershom was mentioned. Every single time, I'm like, convert changed my mind. Not a convert changed my mind. We've gotten two that have opened a little bit. Maybe I can fudge on that, but. And now we're getting into the, you know, where did the mixed multitude go? Where do they just start intermingling, immediately having children with the Jews? Well, all these tribes just took a section of them and brought them in their house and made babies. I mean, it can't work like that. So there's got to be a place. This is 2 years after Sinai. There's got to be a place where these mixed multitude live. Where do you put them? Where do you go? I say the law has a place for them. Literally a place among living with you for, you know, throughout your generations. There's going to be someone there, the ger or the person living there throughout your generations. And they separate the house of Israel, but then they'll say the children of Israel, the ger of Israel, which is another big thing compared to the ger who sojourns with or among you, sort of thing. When he says the ger, tell all the children of Israel, the ger of Israel, almost like a tribe of Israel. That was in Exodus. anyway, I'm all hyped up now. So
I was actually reading an article from the Jewish newspaper. Five Towns. Five Towns has their own newspaper. Five Towns is like a big Jewish community there, like the most on Long Island, Nassau County anyway, not Queens or Brooklyn or Bronx. But there was an article by a rabbi that was saying that actually that non-Jews are actually obligated to go through conversion. I was an interesting article. I gotta read it next. I gotta bring it next week.
can you read it now? You got it?
Don't have it on me right now, but he says that Judaism is no different than let's say Islam or Christianity, where people should be composed. It should be compository to because it's to know the truth and to reject the truth. That Torah is true and that one God is true, and not to accept it all the way is a sin, and that everyone's obligated. That basically, I'm summarizing the article. Can you hear me? Did I lose everyone? What happened?
No, I'm still here. I'm listening.
Did I just kill the room with what I just said?
No, it's a lot to digest.
Well, it makes logical sense because that's what we believe, right? Once you know the truth, you can't go back in what you know. So why would you go back? I mean, it would be a sin. No one seen crickets.
It's because I had the mic off. I'm talking to you, and yeah, that was real brilliant. Okay, where I started. Where am I starting? Oh, what was I saying? It's like, yeah, you're with us. That's what my first Rabbi Dov Yitzchak, he's like, you're with us now. Don't go back. That's why he brought up Ger Toshav. He's like, he took the perspective of welcoming. You're Ger. Okay, you're not Jewish. Okay, you weren't born into this thing, but you're with us. And he said, and when the time comes to Israel, you're coming with us. And he said that like we're going to get the H out of here, kind of a perspective. What he was saying, kind of like we're going to get out of this, not hellhole, but we're going to something better. And you're coming with us. Don't look back. Do not go back. You are with us now. And I love that perspective. I might not be Jewish. Maybe I can't be. I got whatever. Maybe I'm a eunuch, and I got nothing down there, and I can't be circumcised. So, but I can still come along, and I'll still have a place there amongst them when it comes. That's comforting, much more comforting than trying to say, you, there, do, go away. Just don't do it like us. Don't be like us. Don't dare. Don't cover your head. Don't you wear that.
So what are you saying? What are you saying? That as long as you believe, that puts you in the covenant?
No, your actions do. I think it's a better perspective.
Okay, what's your actions? Is it?
No, I'm saying the perspective of being welcomed as a neighbor, rather than our friends across the planet. I think in Judaism, it's a much healthier concept in the long run. Noahide's great for day one. After that, no, you need to learn that if you're going to marry the God of Israel, if you're going to at least pledge yourself to the God of Israel, you will have to align yourself with or join Israel. It doesn't work like Aaron was saying, if you go outside the land, the Jews don't go outside the land and idol smash. So if you want to come to God, if you want to bring an offering to God, if you want to live amongst that vibe that comes out of the Holy of Holies, you've got to accept. You have to align with, grab hold of, or become one of the people of Israel. That's what I'm saying. And it's a much more welcoming, and everyone just leaves. It's a much more welcoming thing, I think. They should be welcomed in. I don't think they should say that you need to be welcomed in and you have to keep. You have to be like us. We're not going to convert you. You're not going to get any inheritance in the land ever. And if you do convert, your children won't get it for 3 generations. And say you have to keep all these laws when the Bible says you give him Nevela, when the Bible compares him to you in Egypt. So there is wiggle room. It's not about belief, but you do have to put yourself, I think, you're never going to excel until you align yourself with, attach, or become one with the children of Israel, the house of Israel, the people that God told a long time ago, I promise you, and people that come with you, that would be us, but we're not them. And that's the contention. That's my personal perspective. And that's the contention. Are we Jews? No. But when somebody asks you, are you Jewish? I might go Jew-ish and wink for fun, but I'm far more Jew than anything else. I mean, I'm far more Jew than I am Christian or Muslim, and I feel like I'm even part them too. But I'm far more Jew than I am dude on the street. You know what I'm saying? So what do I call myself? Who am I? Where do I fit in? The only logical place is the ger. That would be not in this aspiration, not a end game, but that is where I stand now as a man.
I agree.
Today, I stand with Israel. These are my people. Their God is my God. And I'm their friend. They might not like me, but you know what? If you're going to pick on them, you're going to go through me first, kind of a thing. That's where I am.
I'm there too.
I'm not going to be Jewish. My children, God willing, they may. Probably, most likely, we're not raising them Jewish. I can't convert. When someone says you're picking and choosing from the law, it's blessed that I'm even able to read the thing and study with rabbis. I'm blessed that I'm welcomed to read and study. And you know, that's where I'm at. And if I choose not to play guitar on a Saturday, that's my choice. I might whistle. I might sing, but I will not play my guitar. I don't like doing that. It just feels wrong. While I might flip a light switch, that doesn't feel wrong to me. Why? Because I choose to do it, and I'm not penalized for doing it. Nobody's penalized for doing it. So the fact that you pick and choose, if it helps you out, and you still, you're not doing anything wrong. That's the point. You keep it all or nothing. Bullshit. God told you that the ger does not keep all the law, and an animal dying of itself is unkosher. Why would you give it to us for free? Obviously, we're not Jews. So what are we? It's not a title. Well, it's in a descriptive word, and in a book of law, words matter. Terms matter. We can say that you're Christian, you're Goy, you're Gentile, you're over there. We'll just keep these laws and you'll be fine, but not be like, who do you love? Where do you stand? Is this where you want to go? You behave, come on in. And you get tested or whatever, but you just study and you don't worry about doing all that. If you want to, you're not held to it. They can't rest you anyway. They're not in a position to rest you. They can't even keep that law in Torah. Unless you're in Israel, then they say, yeah. And then they even tell the Gentiles you can't use a computer. But people, you travel over there. The hotel guests will say, no, it's Saturday, it's Shabbat. Are you kidding? So you can't rest a ger now. They can't, the nation can't enforce that amongst me. So I'm not under any obligation to keep it like a Jew, since I can't be guided and I'm not amongst it and I'm not living and breathing and eating and shitting Judaism. It's not part of me. I'm not in the land eating falafel. I'm not going to shul with my rabbi. It's not like that for us. So we do the best we can. We start with the 7, as like anybody who walked into the land would have to keep. And anything more that we want to do to enrich our lives and our relationship with our Creator, go for it. Just know that you're a part of the Jewish people if you do this, that it's more than you. And it's not just between you and God alone. It's that when you enter into Judaism, you're entering into a nation. You're entering into a true living 3,000-year-old congregation we know of, we can prove at least. It's not about belief. I mean, yeah, we have beliefs. You can have your own beliefs, whatever, but that's one thing you have to believe, yes. The Jewish people go with God, the Holy Trinity, Torah, God, and the Jewish people. They're in with the package. They're married to God. That's his wife. If you can't come over to God's house if you don't like his old lady.
We're just engaged to him.
Pledged. We can be pledged without being his wife.
Yep.
But I really found the key is the ger, because it includes the Jewish people. Noahide, Stam Noahide, Stam 7 laws have nothing to do with Israel in and of themselves. That was for the stranger among them. Those laws were made up. How do we adjudicate? Asher tells us this all the time. How do we adjudicate the non-Jew among us? with these laws. And we call them that because they're universally applied to every human being in the written Torah itself. So they take that stuff and say that's on you. As well, on you as well when you're among us. But you're among them. You standing with Israel. I stand with Israel. That's the garrest statement you can make. I stand with Israel. That's ger. That statement gets ger. Anyway, anything else? I'm going to leave any thoughts, challenges, anything for the fine folks out there who happen to be still tuned in. Thank you very much. Rosalie, Carla, Will, Wade, anybody?
I'm good until afterwards.
Oh, that's when the good stuff comes out. All right.
I agree with Rosalie.
All right. Mr. William, Mr. Wade. Am I making you mad?
No, what was the question? I didn't hear the last.
Any final words, man?
No final words. It's a good talk. You're right in there. It's unfortunate that you can't convert, but even if you don't, what you're doing, I'm telling you, is great. You're doing great work. Following the Torah, doing this whole, group thing where we all can come in together and talk. You're doing good work for Hashem.
Well,
Amen, brother.
Oh, God willing, God agrees with you. Any final words, Mr. Wade, my friend?
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Shabbat Shalom, all you happy people.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Come back and see us next
Shabbat
Thursday.
Shalom.
Go to the Noahide, I still call it Noahide Nexus, don't I? Go to the
Yep.
Orphans of Avraham Facebook page on Facebook. That's where we meet up. We've got an open room on Hangouts as well. Let us know if you're on that. We'll get you included. In the meantime, on behalf of myself, Will, Wade, Rosalie, Carla, Yohanan, Aaron, and Asher, and Carla, and Rosalie, and everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Y'all be well.
Shabbat shalom.